That's okay. We'll just start with that. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Wang, and I'm typically more organized than this. However, after Blaine's excellent talk this morning, I had to completely redo my talk. So, as one does, no, it's all good. It's all good. So, I'm probably best known as the founder of Anaconda and the creator of the PyData community conferences and sort of data science community. I realize now I've misplaced my phone. If you guys see an iPhone back there, thank you. All right, Paul with the save. There we go. All right. All right, awesome. So this is not my native technical habitat. I'm a creature from the data science and numerical computing community and the Python community. And so today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing or what I'm doing at Skyseed and where that's going, but then get a little bit into the why of it. How did I end up among the P2P and Scuttlebutt and Fediverse people and all this stuff? So first of all, Skyseed is a very small fund that I started last December. There's a lot of interest coming in as soon as I announced it from both projects that wanted to get funded, as well as funders who are interested in investing in this space. So good news to everyone. We've gotten enough interest and traction in the Blue Sky and AppProto ecosystem that there are funders looking to deploy money into this ecosystem. So I started Skyseed because what I saw was that, number one, Blue Sky was taking off, it was gaining a lot of users, but there were a lot of doubters who were like, well, this is just going to be another case of, a centralized social media thing kind of getting crappy and all this stuff. And they have a decentralized protocol in theory, but how decentralized is it really? And so on and so forth. And I decided that, there actually is kind of a point there. If we don't create an ecosystem of lots of projects, then the natural tendency will be, the natural gradient of evolution will be for there to be a single centralized winner. And I love the Blue Sky team, obviously, they're my friends, and I want them to do very well. But at the same time, it is really, really important that we have a set of open protocols and that we have a way on the internet for people to talk to each other and really have a social layer for the internet. So I started the fund to fund things that were explicitly not Blue Sky, but AppProto. And I did this in 3 different ways. One, just pure dev grants for people who are building cool projects but needed some money to pay for servers or needed to pay for some ramen for a month or two to go and get something really cool put together. I also wanted to talk to people who are really interested in leaning in and putting in kind of the founder, sweat equity to go and really build a business around this new emerging technology. So as a pre-seed sort of fund, I could fund people who were going to get to a point where they could then, approach traditional VCs and more traditional seed funders with an actual business plan and a prototype that was already gaining traction. And lastly, there were some things that I could see that were needed in the ecosystem, or I felt were needed in the ecosystem, that were larger, what I would call service layers for the AppProto ecosystem. And that wasn't a particular project or business per se, but there were core services that were needed to get built. And so funding teams to do this kind of thing. So just to showcase some of the teams and efforts that we funded. This is not comprehensive. Some are still, in the process in the works right now. But very proud to to announce that we are funding Black Sky, and so all the wonderful work being done by Rudy and the team there. Really, really great. And that'll be the Rust implementation. Rust, of course, as a Python person, you sort of have to be interested in Rust at this point in time, I guess, is kind of the hipster thing to do in the Python ecosystem. Gray's Social, so awesome custom feeds, and really, I think, spearheading a lot of analytics, advanced analytics services and things that are happening around AppProto. Roomy, so that's awesome, like a peer-to-peer AppProto-based chat, really cool project, and I, for me, part of this is also just looking at things that are cool and interesting and neat to do. So there are a lot of other little projects that didn't want to get announced or whatever, but I did put some money behind because it was just neat to do interesting things in this ecosystem. And lastly, not lastly, but the next to last one that I'll talk about today, SID. So SID is short for claw back your data. Or control your data, one of the two. But in any case, it is a data export tool that runs locally on your computer. Computer is the thing that's not a phone. And what it does is it lets you download all your data from all the meta platforms, from Twitter. Our goal is to essentially grow this to where everyone can use this as a tool to export your data off of the centralized social media apps, download them locally onto your machine, and then when the appropriate or equivalent tool has emerged in the AppProto ecosystem, you can then upload into there. So right now, it supports Twitter export and then importing into Blue Sky. But we're going to add more things. It is an open source project, so part of the funding was to help them actually get the project open source. It runs essentially it's a native app and it runs an embedded browser. So to the servers, it looks like you're just coming through a web browser. And then lastly, another little cool thing, a thing called MemSky, which is a blend of the MEMX project, WorldBrain MEMX, and Blue Sky. And the idea is it's a Chrome plugin that basically adds a social commentary to any website by sourcing from the fire hose. So you go to any website, for instance, here's a New York Times article about the Paul Weiss law firm, and you click the little plugin thing up in the thing, and then you get to see what the Blue Sky ecosystem is, or what the App Proto ecosystem is saying about it. So it's just an example of basically adding a Reddit/Twitter into every single website, right, via Chrome plugin. So these are kinds of interesting little projects that I thought would be nice to get people thinking about what App Proto can be beyond merely just a Twitter clone. How are we doing on time? What, I just started, right? I still have time? Okay, good. I have a lot of slides. I'm like super nervous. So anyway, talk faster. Okay, so the basic investment thesis is that fundamentally, it's actually very, very simple. It actually came out of some discussions with Boris when I was in Vancouver last year. Fundamentally, an open social graph, what it does is it dramatically reduces the cost to build new apps, right? You don't have to be a unicorn. You don't have to go and run a giant SRE team. You don't have to go and convince millions or a billion people to leave all of their friends behind on all of their existing social media apps. They're already here. So this completely changes the economics of what it means to build social applications. It completely changes the economics of how a small team of 2 or 3 people can build an amazing thing that is a runaway success, like we did back in the old days, right? So this is really about that. And ultimately, though, social is not just like a choice of Linux distributions, right? Social is something very, very deep to the human experience. And if we get this layer right, if we actually build social as a substrate for the human experience on the internet, that would actually allow users and communities to go and find what is right for them. There's no number of PMs you can hire into Facebook or into TikTok or into Google or into wherever to make all the decisions for all the people in the world. That's not an architecture we particularly need or want. That is the architecture that venture capitalists do want to extract exponential returns continuing into all perpetuity. That's not what the users want, however, right? So it's really, really important for everyone to understand here that you have the opportunity to build and to get the tailwind of everyone else building in here. No one here is anyone else's enemy, right? So the difference here is between private. The difference is actually looking back, so if you think about the railroads, the private railroads that were built, they were super expensive. They would only run the trains of that particular railroad operator. And instead, we built a nationalized road system where anyone can make a car, and you can put that car on the road, and you can go to anywhere. Very similar to the telegraph and to the telephony system. This is what we can do if we actually build an open social graph. This is what we can do if we can have a way of building shared lexicons and ways to resolve different lexicons that are incompatible, right? Ultimately, this is not really that hard to understand conceptually, and yet it completely changes the world. It completely changes the economics and dynamics of how we as humans engage socially on the internet. So this is why I am putting my own dollars in investing in this ecosystem. This is why I appreciate everyone here who's putting their own time and energy into building on this ecosystem, because we all know how much more dramatically more efficient and better this can be without waiting for if a Honda or Toyota or Ford had to build an entire road network and you could only drive on the Honda road network with your Honda car, that would be an incredibly inefficient world, right? So now, going back a little bit further to why am I doing any of this? Again, as a Python nerd and someone who's really into data analytics and machine learning, all this stuff, why did I get in all this stuff? And the reason is because of the fact that in 2016, some stuff went down here in the US, and I was like, well, what's going on here? What happened? And I got deeper and deeper into trying to study and learn for myself the roots of technology in the intersection of technology and society and human conceptions of self and all these different things. It was a rat hole that went very, very deep. So I went from an open source Python, Linux nerd down to some very, very weird and deep stuff. And it was all really, really great. It was all really great. And I wish every single technologist, every single person interested in technology could actually be given the time and be given maybe an environment where they could study these things, because these are really deeply, deeply important. And it led to me giving a talk in the beginning of 2017 to a small group in Palo Alto where I realized, you know what, in order for us to actually fix what is broken, we have to do nothing less than reinvent the internet. And so I gave this talk about building a humane network and had a bunch of interesting and fun little slides that were quite glib, but kind of terrifying if you think about it. And this is just the examples I had in January of 2017 that I could recover, or that I could think of at the time. And ultimately what I came to was this understanding that, you know, we went from a period of having bandwidth scarcity to attention scarcity. And that was going to be a huge problem. Again, in 2017, this idea of attention scarcity being a fundamental problem. And ultimately what we needed to do was to build a humane network, not just a network for making sure we could launch nukes if the Russians launched first, but a network that actually ensured that we could communicate with each other. And I think a really important thing is how many people here understand the end-to-end, what it means for a network to be end-to-end, right? Like the end-to-end value of a network, right? So the interesting thing is that for a humane network, for a computer network, end-to-endness is an interesting thing to preserve. But for a humane network, actually the trusted connection is most of the signal. So it's exactly the inverse, right? This insight for me, I was sort of struck by the fact that, like, wait, hold on, this is completely opposite of what we want from a computer network, right? The trusted connection is the really important thing. So I wrote some unfinished drafts that are still on my GitHub called The Web We Lost, and I spent time looking at a whole pile of things. A lot, including Urbit, which I wish that Curtis Yarvin kept working on instead of writing all the things he's written lately. So, anyways, I looked at all these different kinds of things, and ultimately, I decided that actually there was a little project by a small team, some randos in Austin that was cool. It's called Beaker Browser and the DAT protocol and all that stuff, and I funded some of that a little bit, and had ideas, which hopefully this doesn't give Paul horrible trigger. Where's the trigger warning for Paul here? But we literally wrote on a napkin about how what we're going to do to disrupt the TBL, bridging to the TBL web. Those of you who use the TBL web, anyone here use Tim Berners-Lee's web? Tim Berners-Lee's web, yeah. A lot of us probably use the TBL web. But the idea here of rebuilding the internet by actually moving from the client, by moving beyond the client-server architecture. And it wasn't enough just to say it's decentralized, right? Decentralization is a topological fix. We don't have a topological problem. We have a problem where we didn't actually have a robust, humane layer to the internet itself. And for me, more than decentralization, the important thing was the orthogonality. And someone in the previous session, the question about composability, right? This is actually the really important thing. For us to build a robust ecosystem, it's not just about, oh, can I run my own server? It's actually, can I separate out these three really important dimensions of an information system so that no single person, by capturing one, can also capture these others. And the really horrible thing is if you think about these three pillars, every single popular commercial service that anyone uses for any of these things is rendered or provided to you by a corporate entity that absolutely collapses and controls all of these things, or is trying very hard to do so. Right? So this idea of an orthogonality for me, was also another kind of a concept for me that I hold very, very close as a foundational concept. So as an investor, I'm looking for things that promote this kind of orthogonality, that preserve these kinds of these different dimensions. And more beyond this, you know, one of the things that we also, when we look here at data privacy, right? Privacy is a term we talk about a lot. Another term that, you know, is bandied around a lot in these decentralized web circles. And I had another concept, which was that privacy isn't just about hiding things. Privacy isn't just about keeping stuff away from the baddies. Privacy is actually about having choice and agency and sovereignty in how we present and show up in different social situations. And Blaine had an amazing slide earlier in the morning that precisely captured this concept. I get to choose how I show up in what kind of a social circumstance. And then, of course, as architects and as creators of these online social spaces, it's on us to then help people to establish and render those norms as being visible so that people know how they want to show up, right? Ultimately, privacy, again, it's not about hiding things. It's about allowing us to have the space with each other to dance, to jive, to actually bandy about and play and troll and do all these things so we can choose who we are and who I am in each of these different spaces. So when we think about what actually is foundational, and this is where I ultimately got to with that rat hole I went down starting in 2017, what is really foundational about human communications? What makes for humane communications? Ultimately, every single conversation is its own kind of a space. In a physical space like this, there are a lot of norms set, right? Just by the physicality of the space, the arrangement of the chairs, the fact that I have the microphone and none of you do, right? Those are norms that are established. But in online spaces, all of these are gone. And we as architects, we as builders, have to have some of these basic tenets in mind if we want to build a humane space for these kinds of human communications. So one of the really, really important things I want to just drive home to everyone as you're building, as you're thinking about this, is this idea of really respecting people's attention and respecting the idea that the giving of attention is actually an intimate act. So anytime we are building a system where one person is giving attention to an item, or let's just actually make this a verb, every single time a user is attending to something in a tool that we build, in a platform that we provide, that user is offering up a bit of intimacy. That is a bit of like it's half of love. And the other half should ideally land in someone else's, with someone else or connect to someone else. So when we're building these platforms, we really need to be paying attention to this idea that attention is this really incredible scarce resource for all of us, and for individual sense making and for collective sense making. And so I'm not going to get into my whole AI spiel because I'm out of time here. But anyway, if that's in, well, that slide's pretty good. Anyway, one thing I will say is one of the things that I absolutely am and will be investing in as Skyseed is a skipped slide. Oh, I skipped an extra slide. In terms of the things that I want to invest in, one of them is absolutely AI. And the reason, and I know AI is a very polarizing topic in the atmosphere, but here's the thing. AI technology is absolutely overhyped right now. AI technology is captured as a topic, I would say, right, between the doomers and the foomers and the EACs and the DACs and everyone else. And actually, the reality is that AI is one of the most powerful technologies that we could possibly have hoped for that can destroy these centralized attention-capturing client-server architectures of the last 15, 20 years. Because ultimately, AI is one half of the two things over the last 50 years that have driven all, I would say, most of the value in internet and computing technologies. So if we don't, okay, and I'm going to skip most of these things, but if we don't actually take charge and take control and forge a path that is actually humane, that is human-centric with this amazing deep learning technology, then it will be taken from us. Other people will continue to use these tools, and they will do a great job of making absolutely amazing things with them. And we, in the punk, hacker, decentralization, or orthogonality movement, whatever you want to call it, we will lose our seat at the table, no question. But if we actually take advantage of this, and if we lean into it, and we build these things in a way that holds our values and that centers on our values, we can actually change how this stuff evolves completely. This stuff is not that hard, right? The entirety of the transformers can be, the transformer code can fit on a single page. It's a single page of Python code. So this is really the amazing thing about this technology. If we use this, we can do something really, really great. We can actually build better connections between people. That's what I fundamentally believe. But it really has to start with users giving consent. It has to start with respecting things like copyright, respecting the right of human authorship, respecting creativity, and forging a path that's based on that and not just on hijacking all of it, right? And this is actually a talk, this is a slide from a talk that I gave to a small meeting of a lot of folks at in DC around AI, copyright, and all these other kinds of things. And it just highlights the fact that they're going to go on, the trillion-dollar players will go on with or without us, and it's really on us to build a third path for ourselves. So with all of that, I just want to give everyone, I want to thank everyone here who showed up, is participating in this community, and I look forward to talking with all of you over the coming day and a half, I guess, that we have. And thank you to Boris, thank you to the other sponsors as well for putting this on.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Peter.